All right, so get ready to dive deep into something that maybe you wouldn't expect.
Boy.
Reinventing organizations.
Ah,
I know what you're thinking.
yeah,
It doesn't sound all that thrilling.
right. Yeah.
But what if I told you that there are companies out there that are ditching the whole traditional hierarchy thing,
Interesting.
empowering employees in ways we've never really seen,
Yeah.
and actually getting better results?
Fascinating because we tend to think of these organizational structures as kind of fixed,
Right.
but they've actually evolved so much over time.
Yeah.
And we might be on the verge of another huge shift.
That's what Frederic Laloux argues in his book,
Oh, yeah.
Reinventing Organizations.
Yep.
He's done a ton of research.
Uh-huh.
He's looked at real-world examples,
Okay.
and he's come up with a pretty compelling case
Yeah.
for why the traditional models are failing and what we can do about it.
One of the most striking points he makes is that the way we've designed organizations, it's like it's at odds with human nature.
Right.
We're trying to fit these dynamic, creative beings into rigid systems that just stifle innovation
Totally.
and drain motivation.
Think about it.
Yeah.
How many times have you felt like just a cog in a machine at work?
Totally.
Like you had to leave part of yourself at the door?
All the time.
I know I have.
And that's a huge reason why employee disengagement is so rampant.
Yeah.
A 2013 Gallup poll found that only 13% of employees worldwide
Wow.
are actually engaged at work.
Ooh, that's raw.
It's a pretty damning indictment of the status quo.
Okay, so traditional organizations are struggling,
Yeah.
but where did these structures even come from?
So Laloux takes us on this really fascinating journey through the history of organizations.
Okay.
And he uses a color-coded system
Oh, yeah, I love that.
to illustrate the different stages of development.
Makes it so much easier to digest.
Right.
Yeah.
He starts with red organizations.
Okay.
Think way back
Okay.
to like tribal societies
Huh.
where power was concentrated in the hands of like a chief or a warlord.
Right.
It was all about power and survival.
Gotcha.
You might even say there are elements of this in today's organized crime.
Okay, so not exactly the model for a thriving workplace,
Right.
but I guess every stage has its purpose.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Red organizations established basic structures,
Like what?
like top-down authority
Yeah.
and division of labor,
Mm-hmm.
which were necessary for societies to scale beyond small groups.
Right.
Then we moved to amber organizations.
Okay.
So think ancient armies and empires,
Ah.
where stability and order were super important.
Oh, it's just a pyramid.
Lots of pyramids.
Yeah.
Strict hierarchies, where everyone knows their place and follows the rules.
Right, follows the rules.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Amber organizations introduce things like formal roles,
Okay.
standardized processes, long-term planning.
Right.
And this brought a level of stability that allowed organizations to grow much larger and more complex than ever before.
Yeah. It probably wasn't the most inspiring place to work, though.
Not really.
No.
And that brings us to the dominant paradigm today.
Right.
Orange organizations.
Okay.
Think modern corporations,
Right.
driven by competition,
Yeah.
achievement, and the pursuit of profit.
So this is where meritocracy comes into play.
Yes.
You climb the ladder based on your performance,
Yeah,
but the system still kind of sees people as resources to be optimized?
exactly.
Yeah.
Orange organizations have brought incredible advancements in innovation,
Sure.
but they've also created a lot of problems we see today, like burnout,
Yeah.
disengagement,
Mm-hmm.
and a focus on short-term gains over long-term sustainability.
It often feels like we're just hamsters on a wheel, you know?
Totally.
Constantly striving for more,
Yeah.
but never quite reaching a sense of fulfillment.
Which leads us to the emergence of green organizations.
Okay.
Their reaction to the downsides of Orange.
Yeah.
Trying to create workplaces that are more humane, more collaborative, and driven by shared values.
So it's like they're trying to bring more heart and soul into the workplace.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Green organizations are all about empowerment,
Okay.
stakeholder value,
Mm.
and creating a sense of community.
Right.
They want to make work more than just a job.
Yeah.
They want it to be a place where people can thrive
Yeah.
and contribute to something meaningful.
That sounds great.
Right.
So what's the catch?
Well,
There's got to be a catch.
here's the thing.
Yeah.
While green organizations have good intentions,
Uh-huh.
they often get stuck trying to fit those values into the same old pyramid structure.
Oh, so they're talking about empowerment,
Yeah.
but the boss still ultimately calls the shots.
Right.
Okay.
And this creates a lot of tension and internal contradictions.
Yeah, I can see that.
People feel frustrated because they're told to be innovative and take ownership,
Right.
but then they hit the ceiling of the hierarchy.
So as we transition into part 2 of this deep dive,
Okay.
I'm curious to know if there's a way to break free from this pattern.
Yeah.
Is there a model out there that actually allows us to operate from a more evolved,
Right.
more human-centered place?
Mm-hmm.
And can we do this without sacrificing effectiveness?
Yeah, that's the question.
Right.
That's the million-dollar question, right?
Yeah.
Can we create organizations that are both deeply human and highly effective?
Right.
Well, that's where Laloux introduces this groundbreaking concept.
Okay.
Teal Organizations.
Teal Organizations, it sounds kind of mystical.
It's not about crystals and incense,
Okay.
although some Teal companies might embrace those things.
Okay.
But what sets Teal apart
Yeah.
is a fundamentally different worldview,
Okay.
one that sees organizations not as machines
Uh-huh.
to be controlled,
Right.
but as living systems,
Oh.
capable of evolving and adapting.
So less like an assembly line, more
Right.
like a rainforest.
Exactly. A rainforest thrives because it's diverse,
Yeah.
interconnected,
Mhm.
constantly adapting to change.
Right.
That's the kind of environment Teal organizations are trying to create.
I have to admit, I'm a little skeptical.
Yeah.
Can you really run a successful business without clear hierarchies
Right.
and control mechanisms?
That's what's so fascinating about Teal.
Okay.
It goes against all of our conventional wisdom about management,
Yeah.
and yet it's working.
Yeah.
Okay, so give me an example. One of the most compelling examples is Buurtzorg,
Okay.
a Dutch healthcare organization
Right.
that's been operating with self-managing teams
Self-managing teams.
for over a decade.
So no bosses.
No bosses.
Seriously.
Over 9,000 nurses working in small autonomous teams,
Wow.
making their own decisions
About what?
about patient care,
Okay.
scheduling,
Uh-huh.
and even hiring.
I'm trying to wrap my head around this.
Yeah.
How do they keep things from just descending into chaos?
That's the beauty of it.
Okay.
They've replaced traditional top-down control with something way more powerful.
Like what?
Trust, transparency, and a deep commitment to the organization's purpose.
Okay. But practically speaking,
Yeah.
how do they make decisions? Who's in charge?
Everyone is, in a sense.
Okay.
They use something called the advice process,
Okay.
which is one of the most innovative aspects of Teal organizations.
Okay. I'm listening.
Imagine you want to propose a new initiative at work.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of going to your boss for approval,
Yeah.
you would first gather input from colleagues
Okay.
with relevant expertise
All right.
and those who would be impacted by the decision.
So it's about tapping into collective intelligence.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Instead of relying on one person at the top to make all the calls.
I like that.
Right.
And is it actually more efficient?
That's the surprising part.
Okay.
Buurtzorg consistently delivers higher quality care
Really?
at lower costs than traditional healthcare providers.
Ah.
They have lower overhead,
Okay.
happier nurses,
Mm-hmm.
and better patient outcomes.
I mean, healthcare is one thing, but can this really work in other industries?
Absolutely.
Okay.
There are Teal organizations thriving
Like where?
in manufacturing, tech,
Mhm.
even finance.
Really?
There's a French company called EVI
Okay.
that makes gearboxes.
Gearboxes. Okay.
They've completely eliminated middle management
Wow.
and reorganized around self-managing teams.
And how's that going for them?
They're outperforming their Chinese competitors,
No way.
even though they have higher labor costs,
Wow.
and their employees are super engaged
Yeah.
and take incredible pride in their work.
We were talking earlier about that feeling of being a cog in a machine.
Yeah.
Teal organizations seem to be addressing that head on.
Right. One of the core principles of Teal is wholeness.
Okay.
It's the idea that we shouldn't have to compartmentalize ourselves,
Right.
that we can bring our full selves to work
Yeah.
with all our quirks, passions, and vulnerabilities.
So it's not just about being efficient and productive. It's about creating a work environment that actually nurtures our humanity.
Exactly. And Teal organizations recognize that when people feel safe to be authentic and vulnerable,
Yeah.
it fosters a much deeper level of trust
Okay.
and connection,
Mm-hmm.
which ultimately leads to better collaboration and more creative problem solving.
I'm thinking about some of the companies we've heard about that have those cool perks, like
Yeah.
bringing your dog to work or on-site childcare.
Right.
Is that part of the Teal philosophy?
It can be,
Oh, okay.
but it's important to understand the underlying intention.
What do you mean?
It's not just about offering trendy perks to attract talent.
Right.
It's about creating a workplace that reflects the understanding that people have lives outside of work.
Okay.
and that supporting those lives actually makes them better, more engaged employees.
So it's about recognizing that people aren't just cogs in a machine.
Exactly.
They're whole human beings
Right.
with complex lives and needs.
Precisely. And there are companies taking this to even deeper levels.
Oh, really?
One example that really struck me was Heiligenfeld,
Okay.
a German company that runs hospitals and care facilities.
Okay.
They have a weekly practice where 350 employees gather
For what?
for 75 minutes of reflection and sharing.
Wow. That's pretty intense.
Yeah.
I can see how that would build a strong sense of community.
Right.
I wonder if it would be too much for some people, though.
It's definitely not a one-size-fits-all approach.
Right, of course.
But what's important is that Teal organizations are constantly seeking ways to create spaces for authentic connection and vulnerability,
Okay.
which research shows is essential for building trust and psychological safety.
Okay, so we've talked about self-management
Yeah.
and wholeness.
Right.
What's the third breakthrough that Laloux highlights?
The third one is evolutionary purpose.
Evolutionary purpose.
It's a pretty radical idea
Okay.
that challenges the traditional notion of strategic planning and control.
Okay. I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
Teal organizations believe that trying to predict the future and control every outcome is futile,
Yeah,
especially in today's complex and rapidly changing world.
totally.
So instead, they focus on being constantly attuned to the present moment,
Okay.
sensing emerging opportunities and challenges,
Mm-hmm.
and adapting their course accordingly.
So less about having a rigid 5-year plan, more about being nimble and responsive to change.
Exactly.
But how do they know where they're going without a clear roadmap?
That's where things get really interesting.
Okay.
They believe that the organization itself has an evolutionary purpose, a kind of innate intelligence
Okay.
that guides its growth and development.
So it's like the organization has a life of its own.
Exactly. It's a living system,
Wow.
constantly evolving and adapting.
Okay.
And the role of leadership
Yeah.
is not to control this process,
Right.
but to listen to it,
Okay.
to sense where the energy is flowing,
Mhm.
and to support the organization's natural evolution.
I'm trying to imagine what this would look like in practice. How do you make decisions about things like investments or new product development if you don't have a strategic plan?
It's about trusting the collective wisdom of the organization.
Yeah.
Anyone can sense an opportunity and bring it forward through the advice process.
Right.
And decisions are made based on what best serves the organization's evolutionary purpose,
Okay.
not just on what will maximize short-term profits.
So it's about listening to the organization's inner compass
Yes.
rather than trying to force it in a particular direction.
Exactly. And one of the most striking examples of this
Yeah.
is Buurtzorg's radical transparency.
What does that mean?
They openly share their knowledge and practices with competitors.
Wait, they help their competitors?
Yeah.
That doesn't sound very business savvy.
But it makes perfect sense from a Teal perspective.
Okay.
Their purpose is not to dominate the market. It's to transform healthcare.
Okay.
And they believe that by sharing their knowledge, they're actually contributing to the evolution of the entire system. They use this great analogy of riding a bicycle.
Okay.
You don't steer by holding rigid to a plan.
Yeah.
You stay balanced and adapt to the terrain.
I'm starting to see how these principles all fit together.
Yeah,
But I have to be honest, it still feels a bit idealistic.
right.
Is this really something that can be achieved in the real world?
Yeah.
Especially in larger, more established companies?
That's a great question, and it's something we'll explore in the next part of our deep dive.
Okay.
We'll look at the challenges and opportunities of transitioning to Teal,
All right.
what practical steps organizations can take to embark on this journey.
All right, so we've explored this fascinating world of Teal organizations, but how do we actually bridge the gap between where most companies are now and this seemingly utopian future?
Well, Laloux doesn't sugarcoat it.
Okay.
He acknowledges that transforming an existing organization to Teal is complex,
Right.
but it's not impossible.
Okay.
He emphasizes that it's more of an organic process,
Like
a seed sprouting and growing, rather than a rigid, step-by-step program.
So there's no magic formula,
Not exactly.
no Teal handbook that we can just follow.
Each organization is unique with its own history,
Yeah.
culture, and challenges. There's no one-size-fits-all approach.
So where do we even begin?
Well, Laloux stresses the importance of leadership.
Okay.
The CEO needs to be fully on board,
Right.
not just intellectually,
Yeah.
but also emotionally.
Emotionally.
They need to deeply understand what Teal truly entails
Okay.
and be committed to embodying those principles themselves.
That makes sense.
Yeah,
It's hard to imagine this kind of radical transformation happening without the leader walking the talk.
right.
What about companies where the CEO is resistant or just doesn't get it?
Yeah,
Are they doomed?
not necessarily.
Okay.
While CEO support is ideal,
Yeah.
it's not the only path to change.
Okay.
Laloux talks about following the energy,
Following the energy, what does that mean?
meaning identifying areas within the organization where there's already a desire for something different.
So those pockets of frustration
Right.
or longing for a better way of working.
Exactly. Those are the places where Teal practices are most likely to take root and spread organically.
I see.
It might start with a small team experimenting with the advice process,
Okay.
or finding ways to bring more wholeness into their daily interactions.
I've heard Laloux mention the term psychological ownership.
Yeah.
What exactly does that mean, and how does it relate to Teal transformations?
It's a powerful concept.
Okay.
Psychological ownership is that feeling of deep connection to the organization,
Mm-hmm.
a sense that its success is also your success.
Yeah.
In Teal organizations, psychological ownership is fostered by transparency,
Okay.
trust, and genuine empowerment.
I like that.
When people feel like they have a real stake in the outcome,
Yeah.
they're much more likely to step up,
Right.
take responsibility,
Mm-hmm.
and contribute their best work.
So it's about creating an environment where people feel valued,
Yes.
heard, and like they genuinely belong.
Exactly. And this ties back to the idea of the organization as a living system.
Right.
When psychological ownership is present,
Yeah.
people naturally align their energy with the organization's purpose.
Okay.
They start to see themselves as part of something larger than themselves,
Mm-hmm.
something that has the potential to evolve and grow.
Laloux also talks about the role of the CEO in a Teal organization being quite different from the traditional command and control model.
Right.
Can you elaborate on that a bit?
One of the most striking examples is Jost de Block,
Okay.
the CEO of Bertsorg.
Okay.
He leads a 9,000-person organization,
Wow.
and yet he doesn't have a traditional office
Seriously?
or even a personal assistant.
Okay, that's definitely not your typical CEO.
Right.
So how does he lead if he's not giving orders or micromanaging?
He leads by embodying the values of Teal.
Okay.
He trusts his teams,
Uh-huh.
encourages open communication, and focuses on removing obstacles that get in the way of people doing their best work.
Wow.
He even writes a regular blog post
Oh, really?
where he shares his thoughts
Okay.
and invites feedback from anyone in the organization.
So it sounds like his leadership style is more about nurturing the ecosystem
Right.
than trying to control every aspect of it.
Exactly. And that's a key principle of Teal leadership.
What is it?
Letting go of the need for control,
Okay.
trusting the collective intelligence of the organization,
Mm-hmm.
and creating space for emergence and self-organization.
So what's the biggest takeaway for our listener today?
Well,
If someone is feeling inspired by these ideas,
yeah.
but also a little overwhelmed by the scope of the challenge,
Right.
what's the one thing they can do to start moving in the direction of Teal?
I think the most important thing is to remember that Teal is not a destination.
Okay.
It's a journey.
A journey. Oh,
There's no need to have all the answers
yeah.
or to try to implement everything at once.
So it's about taking small steps, experimenting,
Yeah.
and learning along the way.
Exactly. Start by asking yourself,
Okay.
what resonates most deeply with you about Teal?
Okay.
Is it self-management,
Mm-hmm.
wholeness,
Yeah.
evolutionary purpose?
Yeah.
Where do you see the biggest opportunities for change in your own work or organization?
And maybe start by having conversations with colleagues,
Exactly.
sharing these ideas and seeing where the energy flows.
Absolutely.
Hmm.
And remember, the future of work is being created right now.
Yeah, that's a good point.
By embracing these principles and
Mm.
experimenting with new ways of organizing, we can create workplaces that are not only more effective,
Right.
but also more fulfilling,
Mm.
more humane,
Yeah.
and more aligned with our deepest values.
This has been such a thought-provoking deep dive.
I'm glad.
I feel like I've gained a whole new perspective on what's possible in the world of work.
Me too.
And for anyone listening who's feeling inspired to explore these ideas further,
Yes.
we highly recommend checking out Frederic Laloux's book, Reinventing Organizations.
It's a great book.
It's a rich and insightful guide for anyone who wants to be part of creating a more human-centered future of work.
I couldn't agree more. And remember, this is just the beginning of the conversation. What will your contribution to the future of work be